Well, now is the time to continue. I would like to invite you to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Cathia Papi, professor at the Department of Education at the TÉLUQ University, and she is in charge of the training session J'enseigne à distance in partnership with the Network of Education. Ms. Papi, it's a pleasure to have you today with us. And so you're going to talk about the importance of the effective relationship at a distance. You have the floor. Good day. I am not an expert on distance effective relationships, but I'd like to open up this great conference. I'm extremely happy to be here, and I could talk about distance education. What's the difference between a dream and reality? Since last spring, the context of the pandemic has affected all of the stakeholders, and we know that the health professionals are there at the forefront, but right after we have the um, education professionals, we have the uh, distance learning, all of these changes with uh, health safety. All of this has been a big challenge for everybody, students, teachers, and parents as well. So I would like to propose you today to address several elements about these three items on screen: technology, distance learning, and how to provide support. These are the challenges. Because you are the experts, I have invited you by email to answer. Answer to I'm going to ask you to answer to a survey by email. Why? I could not show the questions directly on screen, but I have here a second computer so that I will be able to see your answers. And if you answer, I'm going to see the answers. Here's the first question. What is the first image that comes to mind when you think about distance education? So is this computers, tablet, platforms, video conference tools, the faces of students, or the classes that you have been preparing? 46% answer, it is the platforms and video conference tools. The second answer is also 34% is tablets and computers. All right, thank you for your answer. This is not a surprise. This is quite frequent. So there's no distance training without the use of technology. So it's quite normal that you think about these tools first. We know that distance education was born in the middle of the 19th century with development of reproduction tools such as for books. And so this was a while ago. So documents starting to being shared. Then we've seen other developments, and this has led to the internet. So you can see from left to right. And now we have all of these different learning platforms and tools at the beginning of the 21st century. Now, the idea that technologies could revolutionize the education world, this has been possible thanks to new technologies. In the At the beginning of the 20th century, Edison thought that cinema was going to change education. And so in the same manner, many people have tried to imagine how new tools could allow people to learn at a distance. But we know that learning and teaching always required effort, right? So here's the second survey. What does distance learning inspires to you? How are you inspired with distance education? Now, there are different emotions. Many of you might be asking their students to share their emotions in certain circumstances. So what I wonder is, how do you feel about the development of distance education or distance learning? Now, here are the common answers. So we have 30% of people that say that they are concerned. Yes, so many people are concerned. There is fear as well, and we understand that the other emotions are there as well. So the second one is people are tired, they are lethargic. Well, uh, we had to work a lot. We had to prepare for this new year. And so people are tired. And so there have been many changes, and it's uh, possible to see that there are people in favor or against. So this creates a polarity, and we understand that there are many emotions, and all of this is normal. Now, distance education, distance training is often connected to technology, as we've seen. On one hand, we have enthusiasts, we have people that are very excited. They think that we're going to make a revolution in education. On the other hand, we have people that are reluctant to these changes. So this creates a polarization that we find on both groups, those in favor, those against. So we have to be careful. We should not um, stop focusing on practical issues, practical matters. And sometimes the answer is in between, right? It's not a matter of being against or in favor. So if you think about Edison and the cinema, no one can say that a person can do education thanks to movies, but we cannot say that you cannot show a movie once in a while in your classroom. This might be relevant within some pedagogical activity. So you have to think whatever your emotions, your feelings, your biases. We should not stay stuck. We have to see what can be interesting, what can be relevant in our actions. So when we have been talking about images, ideas, and emotions, because all of these are sources of inspiration, these sources are a necessity for teachers, as we know. So we can kill a fly with a bazooka. You can also use a vacuum cleaner to pick up a piece of paper, and we can use different tools as well for education. So we have to be careful with our criticism, those that had to quickly shift to distance learning. Anytime there is a change, this leads to concerns, stress, uncertainty. It's quite normal. People always want to go back to what they know. This is quite simple and this is quite understandable. And it's a matter of how much time we have ahead of us as well. So teachers have done their best in these difficult circumstances, and we have to acknowledge that and congratulate them. That being said, once this first stage is gone through, if we are in an emergency, once this is over, we can go one step further. We have seen teachers that wanted to do differently and that wanted to adapt to distance learning through the J'enseigne à distance training session. There have been many participants. So many of you have participated or know what this is about. So this was a request from the education department of last spring. So the objective was to make sure that teachers could adapt quickly to distance learning. So what was in there for small sessions adapted and broadcast that were assessed according to three levels: primary school, secondary school, and then college and universities. So this was used at the TÉLUQ and in other institutions. We've had many partners. Here they are. So this is based upon the field work. We don't want to propose ideal solutions that are not practical, that you cannot do on the field. These are field-based practices. And I want to thank the École en Réseau, the Conseil scolaire de la Beauce, and all of the stakeholders that have been working and making a remarkable job in the primary and secondary levels. So we want to recognize them. The fact is that distance learning has been developed for adults. Usually it's been developed for adults first and for higher education. So the distance learning expertise has not been developed a lot in the Francophone world. So it was very important to find some partners. And by the way, I want to let me tell you that I had a secret partner. It seems that Mr. Riom, well, we have a secret partner in between teachers. I'm going to tell you what my little secret is that I've got a lot of help. a lot of support. Now, here's a third question. So, have you attended to distance learning sessions? So, here's the first answer. Yes, here are the answers: preschool, primary, secondary, college, or university levels. So, what is your answer? 43%, 0.8%, 43% say yes or no, but I want to do it. So I hope that I have invited you to participate in these distance learning sessions. And so again, all of this is possible in the primary, secondary, college, and university levels. By the way, this session has been very much attended, mostly across Quebec, but also across Canada, and also in 153 countries around the world. This is why uh, we have not made advertisement in other countries. We said this is for Quebec teachers, but the Education Department of Quebec has been acted extremely quickly. The J'enseigne à distance program was born very, very quickly last April, and I got a phone call from the education department at 10 in the evening, and my brain started to work immediately in this digital shift. It's been extremely efficient. In France, they've started to do these types of efforts only in the month of July. So we are ahead of many countries, and we can congratulate ourselves. We can be proud of this. And this is why now we have many people attending our sessions in the world, even though this is for Quebec teachers mostly. So something else in this training is that it's not focused purely on technology. There are many training sessions around the world only focused on technology to allow teachers to do some video conference, to do online work. This is all important, but they did not have any other type of training about the global vision of distance education, such as pedagogy, not only technology. Now, which are the micro programs which is the most useful? Which micro program is the most useful? So 40% answer, it is the micro program called accompagner, support. All of this is a necessity for distance learning. There's no wrong answer, but I am not surprised. The one you have found the most useful is the micro program called accompagner, or to support. This is what we see in terms of numbers amongst the 30,631 accreditations. It's always in this micro program called accompagner where we find the greatest number of participants. So this seems to be of great interest for you, and this is something which can be quite essential. Now we get to the fifth question. So here again, we are talking about support or accompaniment. So how is the support for your students in this distance learning? So it seems that you were able to meet your students maybe once or twice, and you might have you might try to integrate all of that in your own practice. Now, 35% have answered that this is a stimulating challenge, and 32% answer that this is a new practice that is really changing your habits. So this is readily understandable. This is exciting. This is creating changes. We cannot do support at a distance as you do it face to face. This is quite normal. And so we can discuss about it a little bit. We know that isolation feelings, this can be felt very strongly at a distance, and especially in this situation of pandemic, also for parents that are in the primary level where they have to interact more in education. So as you know, your role is paramount in these types of crises because you are the ones that can better do the diagnosis of the commitment and learning of your students in order to propose support measures that are adapted to their needs. This is why I want to propose you to I propose you to discuss support measures in this distance learning. You can find some of that in this J'enseigne à distance training session. You will find many tips. I'm going to share some of these key elements and that you can adapt to your own context, because now you are different types of teachers in different levels. And so we might find some common elements. Let me propose 5 tips, 5 keys that you can use in your own teaching. The first one is about planning. We don't always think about it when we are talking about support. Sometimes we are used to support students in a classroom. Now, if they are not focused, we are going to talk to them directly. Sometimes in classroom, it's easy to do. When it is distance learning, it's not as easy. And of course, we want to do something about this. So we want to plan some time of discussion with the students, sometimes with parents as well. So it's very important to anticipate and to plan for these moments of discussion with your students, and so that you can also ask them about how they are using their time, which ones are the activities, when are there going to be some homework, when is there going to be some um, events or tasks. And so if you have these discussions, you can readily find those students that are more challenged as well. This appears to be obvious, but we have to include this in our plan, in our planning. We have to say, at this moment in time during the week, I'm going to have a discussion time with my students. This is something to be in your schedule. The second tip I wanted to share is creativity. One of the common elements for many teachers is that they are creative people. Sometimes we ask questions to our colleagues, to our pedagogical support team, just like we can decide to make a drawing if there is a missing card in a deck. Well, we can also be quite creative, and we can recreate other types of interactions at a distance. It's going to be different than these one-to-one interactions, but it can be quite exciting to invite students to talk about themselves. You can ask them to choose an avatar, an icon, to draw something, to make a drawing, to choose a character, whatever, something that represents them. And then you can ask them, why have you chosen this icon? So what's your connection with this character, with this icon that represents you? So all of this will allow you to have a discussion with your students. And then this is the type of activity that can be done easily without certain disciplines, such as in arts and crafts. If you have to draw something, in the language classroom, if you have to explain something in a more personal manner using a different language, such as English, you can also do this at the beginning of the year. If you are starting distance education, then you can make an introduction, go around the table, and then you can learn a little bit about all of the students. And then students are going to know who are their peers, and then you can use that information later. So this allows us to know more about the psychological condition of students, and then we can create some connections with them. The third tip is listening. We know that in order to have a full experience, we have to mobilize many senses. Listening is not enough. We have to listen. We have to open our ears. We have to use some empathy as well. So when a student says that they can't make it, we always need to do some active listening to understand why the student is not succeeding. Where's the problem? Is there something that the student did not understand? Maybe that the environment doesn't allow the student to focus. Does the student understand results, expectations? And we should not hesitate to ask questions, and sometimes to really dig deeper in order to ask questions differently in order to do the right intervention. As you know, distance learning requires sometimes more effort than in a regular classroom. Now, once you have identified the problem, this is where you can intervene in a relevant way. If you are in the very UCAM metro station, and if you want to go to one given destination, you have to take the right metro line. It's quite similar for students. We have to know what the problem is, and then you're going to use the right tool. We can explain 3 times how to solve a mathematical problem. If you use different explanations, it's going to be okay. But if this is a socio-affective problem, then you need to find other solutions. So then we need to work on the socio-affective level and find solutions. And it has to be feasible as well. It's not only explaining things over and over again. There might be challenges. There are different levels of support. We have to find the problem, and then we have to intervene at the root of the problem where it's relevant. Finally, the next step is about interest. We all know that interest can be quite challenging at a distance. So sometimes uh, teachers also have to focus, and they also have to keep the interest alive among students. And so there are many possibilities that exist. Let me tell you one little story you will understand. Uh, yes, there was a teacher that was providing some explanation, and I remember that the teacher at some point took the pictures of her baby, and so this was just to create a different rhythm in the education. We can provide different types of activities. We can vary the stimuli. We can also change the way it's done. It can be through a video. It can be homework done through a written text. So motivation cannot be constant all the time. This is always relative to the objective you want to reach, and this is relative to the task you want to do. So if you propose varied activities in this digital world, this can be seen as an opportunity, and this can allow a better motivation if you vary. And let me focus on this. Let me stress this. If you don't lose your students because there are too numerous activities, then you are going to have a better focus of your students in order to reach your interests and to reach the objectives. And this is very important. Now, concerning the interest, what about these 5 cards? Even though these 5 cards appear to be easy and obvious, implementing this at a distance, these 5 tips might be a challenge. So don't be discouraged. Even though it might seem to be easy rather in a classroom, it might be challenging at a distance. And we should not forget some of them and not only act always in the same way. This is very important for support. Also, it's important to mention that all of these 5 cards or tips are important also for individualized support, not only in a group, so the order might vary. So if you want to ask your students to work in a group, you will certainly avoid their isolation feeling, but they are still going to need you. Don't think that because they are working in a group that they don't need your support. Sometimes they don't know how to work in collaboration, so they are still going to need your help in order to develop these collaborative skills in a group and with some distance tools as well. And of course, there are many other elements that I could have mentioned as tips or cards, but I'm going to stop here now. And I'm extremely happy that the program that I saw includes different workshops about the effect and feedback that will allow you to go further in your support mechanisms, and then you can add some additional tips in your toolbox. Now, so we are not going to go back to the past situation. It's not that they're not going to be face-to-face in-person classrooms anymore, but we know that some teenagers and adults need to meet with their peers. As a sociologist, this is even more important in the primary level. We know that this is important in school. We know that this is an important psychosocial protective element, but all of these classes you have developed or will develop for distance learning or hybrid learning, this is going to help some students, even though they might be sick, they cannot attend the classroom. So all of these tools are going to remain useful in the future. Whatever happens, this is going to be something that can be offered in the future. Distant classes, distant classroom will allow some students in the future to attend classrooms without attending school for a certain amount of time. And we know that this can be very important since the beginning of this pandemic. Now, some of these changes will allow you to develop interesting practices in a regular classroom or in a hybrid type of teaching. And this will allow you to develop new skills and new activities and new skills. So this seems to be very important and beneficial, even though now I understand that teachers are tired. Once again, kudos for everything you have implemented. I wish you some courage, get some inspiration, and keep on working. And by the way, when we talk about future perspectives, future results, I perceive some very interesting research perspectives about these new practices of distance teaching at all of these educational levels. As we've said, it was not very much developed in the primary and secondary school. So in the future, this is going to be very important for research. I would like to wish all of you a good conference. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Here is my contact information. You see my email. So at TÉLUQ. And of course, I am available to answer your questions. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for answering the questions in the survey. And if you still want to answer them, it's still possible. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ms. Papi. This was extremely inspiring, and I'm sure that many of you will be able to use these tips in their own virtual classroom. As of us, it's now time to go to the educational appointment about this distance effective bond, which is one of the key elements of the educational success for confined students. So with us,